Welcome class to Chapter 4 of your Python Crash Course textbook. Chapter 4 is titled Working with Lists. So in Chapter 3 we learned how to make a simple list and we learned how to work with the individual elements in a list. So in this chapter we're going to learn how to loop through an entire list using just a few lines of code, regardless of how long our list is. Looping allows us to take the same action or set of actions with every item in a list. As a result, we'll be able to work efficiently with lists of any length, including those with thousands or even millions of items. So this video is going to cover 3 objectives: looping through an entire list, for loops, and avoiding indentation errors. So why would we want to loop through an entire list? Why would we want to perform the same action on every list item? So for example, we could move every element on the screen by the same amount. We could perform the same statistical operation on every element, or we could display each headline from a list of articles for a web page. So we're going to begin with a fairly simple example, and that is of magicians. And we are going to have 3 items in our magicians list, and then we're going to introduce what a for loop looks like. So let's go ahead and code this in our editor. Okay, so we have 3 items. I want you to notice again that our lists are in square brackets. Okay, with the addition now we have for statement followed by a variable. So even when I hover over this in VS Code, it says a variable, and it says this variable is of type string, str. Then we have the in keyword, okay, and then this is follows by our list name. So for every item in our list magicians, we are going to print out the singular version or the item in our list. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get for our results. So we get Alice, David, and Carolina. So we're not getting the raw data list like we did in Chapter 3. Okay, we're getting each individual item using our for statement. So let's look at it a little deeper. Okay, because the syntax is very, very important, because we start with, in this chapter, we start with looking at indentation. And indentation is probably the trickiest thing for students when it comes to Python. Python is a very simple syntax type of language, but it's the indentation that usually grabs people with mistakes. So let's go ahead and just look at it a little further. So for, and then this again is a variable name. So the author chose to use the singular version of the word magicians, and he'll continue to do that throughout the textbook. But honestly, this could be X, as long as we refer to it as X there. This could be I, okay, as long as we refer to it as I there. Okay, so just make sure that whatever you use here, okay, is what you use in the body of your for statement. Okay, never repeat the list name. Okay, it will run, but it's confusing. Okay, so make sure that you're always using the singular version of a list name or some other simple variable name. Notice at the end of this line that it ends in a colon. Now the rule follows for Python. Any line that ends in a colon, the lines that are part of that block, okay, are going to be indented. Okay, so if I forget the colon here, you're going to see that VS Code starts to flag it. Okay, so colon is necessary to end end that for statement line, but to start the block that is associated with the for. And we'll go over some more common mistakes that come about when using a for structure. But first, let's go ahead and look at what we could do a little bit more inside our for loop. So let's go ahead and add this code in. Okay, so now we have 2 statements within our for block. And again, notice that both of these indent, and the indentation is 4 spaces, but only 1 tab. Okay, so never use your spacebar to create an indent. Always use your tab key. So let's go ahead and run this. And we'll see that we have through here, we have Alice, that was a great trick. That's our first item in our list. I can't wait to see your next trick, Alice. Okay, then we go on to David. David, that was a great trick. Can't wait to see your next trick, David. And then the same thing for Carolina. Each one of these ending in a new line feed, okay, creating a paragraph format. Next, we'll look to see how we can do something after a for loop. So we're going to go ahead and add this print statement. Okay, I want you to notice the indentation is not one tab in, and let's go ahead and see what the results will be. So again, repeating the same statements for the for loop, and if we scroll down here, we can see that the last statement here is thank you everyone, that was a great magic show. So this statement in line 9 is not part of the for block, and the reason is because it's not indented. Okay, so if you want a statement to be part of the for block, meaning it will be repeated as long as there's items in that list that you're running through, then you're going to do the indentation. But once you want to kind of exit out of the for, that's when you're going to return your indentation either back to the left margin, or maybe it's just a tab in, maybe it's part of another structure. So avoiding indentation errors. So we're going to go through a few ways that we can look at indentation errors. So again, Python uses indentation to determine when one line of code is connected to the line above it. So the rule, again, when we have a colon ending the line, okay, then the next statement must be indented. Okay, so let's go ahead and duplicate this forgetting to indent to see what kind of indentation error we could bring. Okay, so what I've done is I've tabbed in the for statement. You can see the little squiggly line right there. VS Code is already flagging that for us. So I'm going to go ahead and run, and it says indentation error, unexpected indent. Okay, so this is flagging to us that we should have not indented that line, or perhaps we didn't indent a line. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that back. We'll go ahead and run it again, okay, and we don't have an indentation error anymore. Okay, notice that it'll also flag the line number, okay, and it tells us the file as well. Okay, forgetting to indent additional lines. So let's imagine that the second print statement, okay, that we don't indent it, but yet we thought it should be printed out. So let's go ahead and back this one up and run it. Okay, we don't receive any types of errors, but we only get that first print statement as our output repeatedly through our list. So Alice, that was a great trick. David, that was a great trick. Carolina, that was a great trick. And then notice here that I can't wait to see your next trick is the Carolina. Okay, because that was the last value of what Magician held. Okay, and then that space. Thank you everyone, that was a great magic show. So this code ran, okay, but the output wasn't what we expected. And that's what we call a logical error, or simply a logic error. Okay, indenting unnecessarily. So if we were just printing out just Magicians, the raw list of or the raw format of a list, okay, we wouldn't indent. So let's see if I can go ahead and duplicate this here. I'm going to go ahead and return this back in, and I'll just comment out these lines temporarily. Put a print statement in here. Give it a run. Okay, and now it says indentation error again, unexpected indent. Okay, and that's because this is not part of a for structure. We would want to just have it at the left margin so that we get the raw output of that list itself. Indenting unnecessarily after the loop. Okay, again, a logical error. Okay, so if we go ahead and take an indent, and I apologize, this should be indented here as well. Okay, if we go ahead and take that last print statement, okay, and we indent it, now it's become part of the for body. So when I go ahead and run that, you can see that I have my first two statements. Okay, you're going to get the last here. Alice, that was a great trick. I can't wait to see your next trick, Alice. The new line feed. Thank you, everyone. That was a great magic show. And then it just keeps repeating. David, David, that was a great magic show. And then same thing with Carolina. So again, you want to watch those indentations, okay? And again, I'll get this updated for the slideshow itself. Okay, forgetting the colon at the end of a for statement tells Python to interpret the next line as the start of the loop. So let's go ahead and create that error. Okay, so maybe you type in your for statement and you just were typing quickly and you forgot that particular syntax. Okay, so syntax error, invalid syntax, points right to the end of that line. Doesn't tell us that, hey, you're missing the colon, but we need to know that the for statement should always end in a colon. Okay, and then we get our correct output. Next, let's look at the lab for this section, and this 4-2 animals. Think of at least 3 different animals that have a common characteristic. Store the names of these animals in a list, and then use a for loop to print out the name of each animal. Okay, much like we did with magicians, right in the very beginning of the chapter. Next, it says to modify your program to print a statement about each animal, such as a dog would make a great pet. Okay, then after that, we're going to add a line at the end of the program stating what these animals have in common. You could print a sentence such as, any of these animals would make a great pet. So the second bullet is not going to be part of your for structure. So this ends this section where we covered the objectives, looping through an entire list, for loops, and avoiding indentation errors. Questions, please let me know.